The day the Vraxian Empire made first contact with Earth was supposed to be momentous, historical, and profound. Instead, it became the galactic equivalent of stepping on a rake and getting smacked in the face. Mack Reynolds was elbow deep in the guts of a malfunctioning air recycler on Space Station Horizon when the alarms first sounded. He yanked his head out from under the access panel, banging it against the metal frame in the process. Motherfu, he began before the station-wide announcement cut him off. Attention all personnel. This is not a drill. Unknown spacecraft approaching. All non-essential personnel report to emergency stations. Mack rubbed his forehead. Perfect timing, as always. Across the maintenance bay, Talia Wong was already closing up her diagnostic terminal, her dark eyes fixed on the emergency lights flashing along the corridor. "What do you think?" She called over. "Russians? Chinese? Maybe Jeff Bezos finally built that Death Star he's been dreaming about?" "Nah," Mack replied, wiping grease on his already stained jumpsuit. "And my money's on aliens. It's always aliens in this scenario." "You watch too many movies," Talia said. But she was smiling. $10 says it's a satellite malfunction. "You're on." As they made their way to the observation deck, the station's artificial gravity hiccuped, sending them both stumbling against the wall. "That's not good," Mack muttered. "No kidding, genius." When they reached the observation deck, they found it packed with other station personnel, all staring out the massive viewport. In the distance, a fleet of sleek, silvery ships had appeared, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight reflected off Earth below. "Pay up," Mack said, holding out his hand without taking his eyes off the spectacle. Talia ignored him, pushing her way to the front of the crowd. "Are those actually alien spaceships?" Commander Leon Bradley, the station's commanding officer, stood before the window, his face pale as he spoke into a communications unit. "This is Space Station Horizon. We acknowledge your presence and welcome you to Earth space." The largest ship in the alien fleet positioned itself directly in front of the station. A booming voice crackled through the station speakers, the English heavily accented but understandable. "Humans of Earth. I am Admiral Kizzy Tech of the glorious Vraxian Empire. Your primitive planet is now under our consideration for addition to our dominion. Prepare your leaders for formal surrender negotiations." A collective gasp went through the observation deck, followed by an awkward silence. Then Mack snorted. He couldn't help it. Did he just say under our consideration? Like we should be grateful? Talia elbowed him, but she was biting her lip too. "Shh, they can probably hear us." "So? Look at those ships. They've got external power conduits. Who designs a battleship with external power conduits?" By now, several engineers around them were also noticing the design flaws. Someone in the back whispered, "Are those exhaust ports completely unshielded?" Commander Bradley shot them all a warning glare. But it was too late. A ripple of technical critique spread through the room, growing louder as more engineers spotted more flaws. "Their communication array is totally exposed. Those maneuvering thrusters would burn out in our atmosphere. Is that duct tape holding that panel together?" The alien voice came back, indignant now. "Silence. Your primitive minds cannot comprehend the advanced technology of the Vraxian Empire." This was followed by another awkward silence, and then the entire observation deck erupted in laughter. And that's how humanity's first diplomatic interaction with an alien species began, with Earth's finest engineers laughing their asses off at supposedly superior technology. It wasn't the best first impression. Admiral Keyes T. Tech's holographic projection hovered menacingly over the United Nations General Assembly. Well, it would have been menacing if the projection hadn't kept flickering and occasionally displaying what appeared to be the alien equivalent of a buffering symbol. "You have precisely 24 of your Earth hours to formalize your surrender," the Admiral announced, his four arms crossed in what was probably supposed to be an intimidating pose. "Any resistance will be met with the full might of the Vraxian battle fleet." The UN Secretary-General cleared her throat. "Perhaps we could discuss terms for peaceful." "There will be no discussion," Kizzy Tech interrupted. "Only submission." The Vraxian Empire does not negotiate with pre-FTL species. You should be honored we didn't simply vaporize your pathetic little planet. The hologram flickered again, briefly showing what looked like Admiral Keyes T-Tech picking something from between his teeth before returning to the posed stance. 24 hours, he repeated, and the transmission cut. Back on Space Station Horizon, Mack and Talia had been voluntold to join an emergency response team. They sat in a cramped conference room with military officials and other engineers, watching a replay of the UN transmission. "Well, he seems nice," Mack whispered. General Helena Foster, the highest-ranking military officer on the station, stood up. "Options, people. I need options that don't involve surrendering Earth to these pompous space squids." "Our weapons are useless against their shields," said a grim-faced analyst, "and they outnumber our spacecraft at least 10 to 1. While the military types debated hopeless defensive strategies, Mack nudged Talia and slid his tablet toward her. On it was a schematic he'd cobbled together based on observations of the alien ships. "Look at this," he whispered. "Their ships' operating systems are broadcasting unencrypted command signals. I picked it up on my diagnostic tools during the first contact." Talia's eyes widened. "That's just sloppy engineering. It gets better. Remember those external power conduits we were laughing about? They're running outdated network protocols. I recognize some of the patterns from studying historical Earth systems. Are you saying their advanced alien technology is about as sophisticated as Windows Vista?" "Yeah, pretty much." A slow smile spread across Talia's face. "So theoretically, we could hack into their systems. Better than that." Mack grinned. "We could rewrite their ship configurations on the fly, turn their weapons against each other, reconfigure their shields to only block the color purple. Whatever we want." Talia turned to stare at him. "That's insane. So is surrendering to space squids." "I'm in." They raised their hands simultaneously. General Foster looked at them with irritation. "Yes? This better be good." Mack stood up, trying to look more confident than he felt. "General, what if I told you we could reprogram the alien ships in the middle of battle?" The room went silent, all eyes turning to the scruffy engineer with grease still smudged on his forehead. "I'd say you're either a genius or completely out of your mind," Foster replied. "Possibly both." "Then you're going to love this," Talia said, standing up beside Mack, "because what we're about to propose is definitely both." As they explained their wild plan, the expressions around the table shifted from skepticism to disbelief to cautious hope. It was, without a doubt, the most ridiculous defense strategy in the history of Earth. It was also their only chance. "If we're actually doing this, we need more people," Talia said, pacing the makeshift command center they'd been given. "The people who think outside the box. Way outside the box. Like the box is a distant memory kind of outside." Mack nodded, scrolling through personnel files on his tablet. "I know just who to call." 6 hours later, Quinn Martinez slouched into the room, looking like someone who had been dragged out of bed after a 3-day coding binge, which was exactly what had happened. "This better be good, Reynolds," Quinn said, pushing wild curls out of bloodshot eyes. "I was in the middle of something important." "Ante, hacking the Pentagon again?" Mack asked. No comment. Quinn dropped into a chair, but hypothetically their firewall updates are getting better. Hypothetically. Eh? Before Mack could respond, the door slid open again and a tall woman in a meticulously pressed uniform strode in. Captain Delia Okonkwo surveyed the room with sharp eyes, her military bearing at odds with the grease-stained multi-tool hanging from her belt, the source of her nickname Wrench. "So this is the crack team that's going to save humanity?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "A station maintenance engineer, a satellite technician, and," she looked at Quinn, "someone who appears to be actively detoxing from energy drinks." "Red Bull gives you wings," Quinn muttered, "and hallucinations after the 15th can." Talia stepped forward. "Captain Okonkwo, your reputation precedes you. Didn't you once fix a fighter jet mid-flight using only duct tape and a ballpoint pen?" It was aluminum tape and a paperclip, Delia corrected, but her expression softened slightly. And it was a temporary fix that kept the plane in the air for another 40 minutes. Mack added, "We need that kind of improvisation." "What exactly are we doing here?" Delia asked. Mack grinned. "We're going to teach alien spaceships new tricks." General Foster entered with 2 soldiers carrying a sealed container between them. "Your test subject has arrived." The container was placed on the central table and unsealed. Inside was a piece of alien technology, a control node salvaged from a small probe the Vraxians had sent to scan the station. Quinn leaned over it, suddenly alert. "Oh, hello, beautiful. You and I are going to get very well acquainted." Over the next 18 hours, the team worked in a caffeine-fueled frenzy. Quinn cracked the alien operating system in 2 hours. It's basically Linux if Linux were written by drunk octopuses. While Delia dismantled and reassembled the hardware components with surgical precision, Mack and Talia focused on creating an interface that could communicate with the alien systems in real time. "The problem," Talia explained to General Foster during a brief progress update, "is that we can't just shut down their ships. They'd notice and lock us out." So instead, Mack continued, "We're creating what we call an adaptive redesign virus. It makes subtle changes to their systems that they won't immediately detect. Like convincing their targeting computers that up is slightly more up than it actually is," Quinn added. "Or rerouting power from weapons to life support in incremental stages," Delia said. General Foster looked skeptical. "And this will work?" The team exchanged glances. "Theoretically," Talia said. "Probably," added Mack. 50-50. Quinn shrugged. "We'll make it work," Delia stated with military confidence. At the 23-hour mark, as the deadline for Earth's surrender approached, the team stood around a small device that looked like a cross between a router and a Rubik's Cube. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mack announced, holding up the device, "I present the XV1RU5, or as I like to call it, the Please Don't Let Us Die box." "That's a terrible name," Quinn said. "Got something better?" Quinn thought for a moment. "The Up Yours, Aliens device?" "Focus, people," Delia cut in. "Will it work or not?" Talia ran a final diagnostic and nodded. "It's ready." Whether it works or not, she looked out the viewport at the looming Vraxian fleet. "I guess we're about to find out." Earth's 24 hours were up, and the Vraxian fleet wasn't messing around. Their massive warships moved into attack formation with military precision that would have been impressive if they weren't about to vaporize major population centers. "Surrender has not been received," Admiral Kadzi Tech's voice boomed across all frequencies, commencing planetary subjugation. The first Vraxian energy blasts lit up the sky, targeting Earth's pathetic defensive satellites. Each shot was followed by a small explosion and a cloud of space debris. "Those were the good satellites," muttered General Foster from the command center. "The ones with the really nice cameras." Earth's militaries launched everything they had: missiles, experimental energy weapons, and a few pilots in fighter jets who apparently didn't get the memo about how outmatched they were. The missiles exploded harmlessly against Vraxian shields. The energy weapons might as well have been flashlights for all the damage they did. On Space Station Horizon, Mack, Talia, Quinn, and Delia watched the initial barrage from the viewport of a small stealth shuttle. "This is a terrible plan," Quinn said, clutching the Up Yours, Aliens device to their chest like a security blanket. "Agreed," said Delia, checking her equipment for the 3rd time. "But it's the only one we've got." Mack turned to the shuttle pilot. "Get as close as you can to that destroyer, the one with the weird bulge on the port side." "The weird bulge that looks like a giant space hemorrhoid?" the pilot asked. "That's the one. It's their communications hub." The shuttle's stealth technology, hastily adapted from experimental prototypes, seemed to be working. They approached the Vraxian destroyer without being detected, or at least without being shot at, which was close enough to count as success in their book. "Ready?" Talia asked, zipping up her spacesuit. "No," the other 3 replied in unison. "Great. Let's do this." They spacewalked to the destroyer's hull, magnetic boots keeping them attached to the alien metal. Quinn located an access panel and, with surprising dexterity for someone running on nothing but caffeine and fear, attached their device to the ship's external systems. Initiating connection, Quinn whispered into the comm, fingers dancing over a portable terminal. "And holy crap, we're in." Their firewall is basically a keep-out sign written in crayon. Back on the shuttle, Talia and Mack monitored the incoming data stream. "Start with something small," Talia advised. "Nothing they'll notice right away." Targeting systems, Mack decided. Introducing a 2-degree error to their targeting algorithm. Now. The effect was almost immediate. The destroyer fired on another Earth satellite but missed by several kilometers, hitting empty space. "It's working," Delia reported from her position on the hull. "They're firing again. And missing again. Time to turn it up a notch," Mack said with a growing grin. "Quinn, can you access their propulsion controls?" "Already there. What did you have in mind?" "Let's give them a little shake, rattle and roll." Quinn's fingers flew over the terminal. Maneuvering thrusters set to random firing pattern in 3, 2, 1. The massive destroyer suddenly jerked sideways, then spun in a lazy half-circle. Through the shuttle viewport, they could see confusion spreading through the Vraxian fleet as one of their largest ships began doing what could only be described as a drunken ballet in space. "Admiral Keyes T. Tech is losing his mind," Quinn reported, having hacked into their communications. "Lots of shouting, something about incompetent pilots, threats of airlock ejections, the usual." "Time to introduce the virus to the fleet," Talia said. "Quinn, upload the adaptive redesign package." "Uploading now." Using their own communication network to spread it. And it's away. They watched as the virus propagated through the Vraxian fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then one ship's weapons powered down mid-charge, another began rotating slowly on its axis. A third suddenly accelerated backward, narrowly avoiding collision with its neighbor. "It's beautiful," Mack whispered. Earth's military leaders, seeing the sudden disarray, seized the moment to launch a coordinated counterattack. This time, their missiles found targets as shields flickered and failed. "I think," Delia said, watching the chaos unfold, "we might actually pull this off." That's when the alarms on Quinn's terminal started blaring. Guys? They've detected us, and they do not look happy." "Split up," Delia commanded, her military training kicking in. "Different ships, maximum chaos." "That's a terrible idea," Quinn protested. "Haven't you seen literally any horror movie?" "This isn't a horror movie," Max said, grabbing a portable version of their hacking device. "It's a heist. A really weird space heist. That doesn't make me feel better." But the decision was made. The shuttle dropped each of them at different entry points across the Vraxian fleet. Mack took the flagship because of course he did, while Talia targeted their weapons control ship. Quinn, still complaining, headed for their central communications vessel, and Delia made for their engineering command ship. Mack slipped through a maintenance hatch on the flagship, muttering to himself, breaking into an alien spacecraft. Just another Tuesday. Totally normal career progression for a station maintenance guy. He navigated through cramped service tunnels, following the schematics they'd pieced together from their initial hack. The Vraxian ship interior looked like someone had asked an octopus to design a submarine after watching too many 80s sci-fi movies. Pipes and cables ran everywhere in defiance of any sensible organizational system. "Their engineers must be paid by the foot of cable," he whispered into his comm. The plan was simple: reach the secondary command center, plant the device, and get out before anyone noticed. The plan lasted approximately 3 minutes and 42 seconds, which was 3 minutes and 41 seconds longer than Mack had honestly expected. He rounded a corner and found himself face to face with Admiral Keyes Tech and 2 armed guards. There was a moment of mutual shock. The Admiral, significantly taller in person and sporting what appeared to be ceremonial face tentacles, recovered first. "Human infiltrator," Keyes Tech shouted, reaching for his weapon. "Routine maintenance." Mack countered, holding up a random tool he'd grabbed from his belt. Your quantum flux capacitor was showing critical signs of capacitation. The guards raised their weapons. Mack did the only sensible thing. He threw his tool at the ceiling panel above them, which crashed down with a satisfying clang and ran like hell in the opposite direction. New plan, he gasped into the con. Going for direct mainframe access. On the weapons control ship, Talia was having her own problems. The virus hit a firewall, she reported, fingers flying over her terminal. They're adapting faster than we expected. Can you bypass it? Delia's voice crackled through the con. Not with the original code. Talia stared at the alien programming language scrolling across her screen, then had a flash of inspiration. But maybe I don't have to. Instead of trying to break through the firewall, she began using it as a framework, piggybacking her commands on the ship's own security protocols. It was like convincing the bouncer that you were actually supposed to be backstage all along. I'm in, she announced moments later, directing targeting systems now. Across the fleet, Vraxian weapons systems suddenly identified other Vraxian ships as priority targets. Meanwhile, Quinn had reached the central communications hub, which was mercifully unguarded. Apparently, the Vraxians hadn't considered that someone might physically infiltrate their ships. Amateurs, Quinn muttered, connecting their device. It's like they've never been invaded before. With access to the fleet's communication network, Quinn began introducing subtle but devastating changes to the ship's operating parameters. Life support systems rerouted power from weapons. Engine coolant was diverted to food replication systems. Artificial gravity fluctuated between half and double normal strength. Hey, check this out, Quinn said over the con. They've got the alien equivalent of a PA system. Anyone want to hear what the Vraxian version of Never Gonna Give You Up sounds like? Focus, Quinn, Delia snapped. On the engineering command ship, Delia had made the most progress. With her extensive knowledge of propulsion systems, she'd identified a critical vulnerability in the Vraxian engine design. Their reactor shielding responds to harmonic frequencies, she explained as she worked. If I can synchronize a disruptive pulse across all ships simultaneously, you'll cause a chain reaction, Talia realized. Not enough to destroy them, Delia clarified, but enough to force emergency shutdowns across the fleet. Back on the flagship, Mack had managed to lose his pursuers and reach the mainframe access point, a room filled with what looked like glowing jellyfish trapped in glass columns. I found their central processing unit, he reported. It's weird. And oddly beautiful. Save the alien tech appreciation for later, Quinn replied. We've got about 3 minutes before they lock us out completely. Mack connected his device and uploaded the final stage of their virus, a complete system override disguised as an emergency defense protocol. Admiral Keyes text command codes accessed, he announced. Initiating fleet-wide stand-down order in 3, 2, 1. Across the Vraxian fleet, engines powered down, weapons systems went offline. Artificial gravity stabilized. And every display screen showed the same message in Vraxian script: system override, Earth defense protocol activated. Delia's voice came over the con, tense but triumphant. It worked. Now, let's get the hell out of here before they figure out how to turn it off. The formal surrender of the Vraxian Empire took place on Space Station Horizon, which seemed fitting given that's where the whole mess had started. Admiral Gazet Tech stood before a hastily assembled coalition of Earth's leaders, his face tentacles drooping in what humans would later learn was the Vraxian expression of extreme embarrassment. The Vraxian Empire acknowledges the unexpected capabilities of Earth's defensive measures, Gazet Tech stated, reading from a prepared statement. We formally withdraw our claims to your solar system and recognize Earth as a sovereign entity. What he didn't say, but what everyone in the room knew, was that the mighty Vraxian fleet was currently dead in space, their ships reduced to floating hunks of metal until Earth's engineers decided to give back control of their systems. General Foster stepped forward. We accept your surrender, Admiral, and we're prepared to assist in restoring your fleet's functionality, after we negotiate appropriate reparations and non-aggression treaties. In the back of the room, Mack, Talia, Quinn, and Delia watched with barely contained glee. They'd been pulled from the Vraxian ships just before Earth's military launched a coordinated attack on the disabled fleet. The aliens, unable to defend themselves, had surrendered within hours. "Did you see his face when they played back the footage of his ships doing ballet?" Quinn whispered. "I've saved that as my new screensaver. I'm more impressed by how quickly they went from surrender or die to please don't tell anyone about this," Talia replied. And news of Earth's victory spread quickly through what they now knew was a vast galactic community. Within days, diplomatic envoys from 3 different alien confederations arrived to establish relations with the planet that had humiliated the supposedly unbeatable Vraxian Empire. Turns out, Mack explained at the celebration party held in their honor, the Vraxians have been bullying everyone for centuries by claiming to have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. "And nobody ever thought to check?" Delia asked incredulously. "Their marketing department is apparently better than their engineering team," Talia said, raising her glass, "to exploitable design flaws. To technical debt," Quinn added. "To human ingenuity," General Foster said, joining their toast, and to the future. That future arrived faster than any of them had expected. Within months, Earth was establishing its first off-world colonies, incorporating salvaged Vraxian technology improved upon by human engineers. The Vraxians, humbled but surprisingly good sports about the whole thing, eventually became valuable trading partners, particularly after they fired their entire engineering department and hired human consultants. Admiral Kedzi Tech, after a brief period of disgrace, published a best-selling memoir titled How to Lose a Space War in 24 Hours, and became something of a celebrity on the galactic-speaking circuit. As for Mack, Talia, Quinn, and Delia, they formed Earth's first interstellar troubleshooting company, specializing in creative technical solutions to species-threatening problems. Their business cards simply read, "Human Engineering," because sometimes the best solution is a really bad idea that actually works. In diplomatic circles throughout the galaxy, a new saying emerged whenever a seemingly unstoppable force encountered an apparently immovable object. But have you considered the Earth approach? It wasn't always elegant. It rarely followed protocol. But when the chips were down and the situation seemed hopeless, there was nothing quite like human engineers with duct tape, caffeine, and a complete disregard for what should be impossible.